At my granddaughter's engagement dinner, the one I paid for down to the last centerpiece, my future grandson-in-law's mother stood up with a glass of champagne in her hand and told the whole table that I was the help they'd been forced to invite. She said it with a smile so practiced it looked surgical. Everybody at that table laughed, including my own granddaughter. It was the punchline to a joke I didn't know I'd been cast in. But the laughter stopped cold when her husband looked across the table at me, and his face went the color of old dishwater. He set his fork down very carefully, like it might go off. "Wait," he said. "Sir, you're not Mr. Calloway from Vance Equity, are you?" That was the moment I stopped being somebody's chauffeur and started being somebody's nightmare. But to understand why I let it all burn down, you've got to understand how much I'd given them first. Before I get into it, I want you to do something for me. Family, hit that subscribe button if you've ever been treated like furniture by people who were supposed to call you blessed. I was sitting in my recliner that Tuesday night with a bowl of grits gone cold because I dozed off in front of the television again. To anybody looking in through my window, I was just Marcus Calloway, 68 years old, a retired man in a cardigan with holes at the elbows, living alone in a brick rancher on the same street I'd lived on since 1991. My refrigerator had a magnet shaped like a catfish that my late wife Dorothy bought at a flea market 30 years ago. My truck out front was a 2009 Silverado with a dent in the tailgate I never bothered to fix. That was the picture I let the world see. It was a comfortable coat to wear, and it told me everything I needed to know about who really loved me and who was just circling. My granddaughter Imani didn't know that the grandfather eating cold grits had built Vance Equity Partners from a single warehouse loan into a holding company worth $400 million. She didn't know that 3 hours earlier, from my own kitchen table, I'd authorized the buyout of a regional hospitality group that her future mother-in-law's husband happened to run into the ground. She had no idea my name sat on documents she would never see. She only knew me as Pop Pop, the man who drove an old truck and clipped coupons out of the Sunday paper. I let her believe that. I wanted her to grow up understanding the weight of a dollar, not coasting on the shadow of mine. I failed at that too, it turns out, but I didn't know it yet. My phone rang and lit up the dark kitchen. It was Imani. "No, hey, Pop Pop, how's your knee? No, did you eat dinner?" Just the clipped, breathless voice of a 26-year-old who had learned to ask before she greeted. "Pop Pop, I need $3,000 by Friday." I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't a question. It was a transaction notice. "Well, hello to you too, baby girl. I'm doing fine. Q for asking." "Pop Pop, I'm serious. Reginald's mother found us this venue, the Magnolia House, and they've got a cancellation for the engagement dinner. But we have to lock the deposit tonight or somebody else takes it. Letter rate. $3,000 was less to me than what I'd spent on coffee that quarter. But that wasn't the part that bothered me. Reginald was a man who'd been between opportunities for the better part of a year, talking about a real estate license he never finished studying for. He measured his worth in his mother's approval, and his mother measured everything in label and lineage. That's a lot of money for one dinner, sugar. Have y'all looked at something smaller? Mount Olive Church has a fellowship hall that's real nice. I heard the scoff before she even spoke. Sharp. Practiced. Already her future mother-in-law's scoff borrowed early. The fellowship hall? Pop Pop, are you serious right now? Reginald's mother is going to be there, his whole family. I am not doing this at a church hall. All right, I'll send it. But Imani, you need to start thinking about what a marriage costs versus what one dinner costs. Yeah, I hear you. Just zell it tonight, okay? I gotta show Vivian the confirmation. The line went dead before I could say goodbye. She didn't say, "Thank you." She got what she called for and hung up the phone the way you hang up on customer service once they've solved your problem. I sat there, a long moment, looking at my own reflection in the dark television screen. Then I opened the Decoy banking app, the one tied to the little checking account I use to keep my cover intact, and I sent the money. I went back to my cold grits. They tasted like cardboard. 2 days later, I drove across town to the townhouse Imani shared with Reginald, a glass and brick complex with a gated entrance and a fleet of leased German cars in the lot. My Silverado rumbled up to the gate like an old mule among racehorses. The security guard eyed my truck with real suspicion until I gave him the unit number, and even then he wrote something down like he was filing a complaint against the vehicle itself. I parked beside Reginald's leased BMW and walked up carrying an envelope of cash for the catering tasting, because Imani had texted that her card was doing something weird with the bank. I knew good and well it was maxed from a designer bag I'd seen on her Instagram the week before. Imani opened the door in a silk robe. Her eyes dropped straight to my work boots, scuffed at the toe, and her nose did a small involuntary twitch like she'd caught a whiff of something gone bad. "Oh, it's you!" She didn't step back to let me in. She held the door like a barricade. "Reginald's mother is coming by in an hour. You can't park that truck out front, Pop. People are going to think somebody's doing yard work." "It runs fine, baby. Gets me where I need to go. It's an eyesore." And honestly, she let her eyes travel down to my stomach. "You should probably be walking more anyway. You're looking a little soft." I felt something tighten behind my ribs. Not anger yet, just a long, slow disappointment settling in like weather. I'll keep that in mind. Make sure Reginald gets this for the tasting. She took the envelope by the very corner, like my hand might be contagious. "Right. The French place. You probably wouldn't care for it. The portions are small." She shut the door without inviting me in for water, without a single thank you. I stood in the hallway and heard the lock click, then her voice, muffled but clear enough through the wood. "God, he smells like mothballs. I need to wash my hands." And Reginald's voice, lower, lazier. "Did he bring the money, though?" "Yes. But you gotta talk to him before the wedding. He cannot show up looking like he just got off a shift somewhere." I walked back to my truck. I sat behind the wheel and gripped it until my knuckles went pale, but I didn't start the engine right away. I wasn't a violent man. I dealt in leverage, in due diligence, in hostile takeovers that never raised my voice once. I didn't scream. I planned. I drove to the park near the river, pulled out the second phone I had for business only, and called my attorney. "Walter, it's Marcus." "Evening, Marcus. What do you need?" "I need a complete financial workup on the Whitfield family, Vivian and Harold Whitfield, and find out everything you can about their son Reginald. Debts, credit, hidden accounts, all of it." "On it. Everything all right?" "No. But it's going to be." I hung up and sat watching the river a while. The sun was going down orange over the water, and a cold, settled resolve moved into my chest like furniture being delivered. I had tried love. I had tried generosity. Now I would try something with teeth. The conflict found its real shape 3 weeks later. At a dinner Vivian Whitfield insisted on hosting at Le Marchand, the kind of restaurant where the menu has no prices and the tablecloths cost more than my Sunday suit. I parked 4 blocks away to avoid the valet's judgment and walked the rest. The maitre d' looked at my navy suit, the same one I'd had pressed for 15 years, and pointed me toward the kitchen entrance without asking my name. I told him I was there for the Callaway party. His eyebrows lifted half an inch and he led me, grudgingly, to a table tucked behind a column near the swinging doors. Harold Whitfield arrived at 7:20, 15 minutes late. In a rented Bentley, he tipped the valet for like he owned the dealership. He was a big man who wore his weight in his chest, in a gray suit that fit him the way confidence fits a man who's never had to earn it twice. Vivian came in on his arm, draped in gold that caught the chandelier light, walking like she expected applause. Reginald and Imani waited for them at the host stand. I watched my granddaughter shrink a little under Vivian's inspection, the way a plant leans away from too much sun. I stood and walked over. Harold saw me first, and his eyes traveled from my scuffed shoes up to my off-the-rack tie, and something cold settled behind them, the look you give a stain you didn't order on the tablecloth. "And this must be Marcus," Vivian said, her voice tight as a drawn bow. "Just Marcus is fine." Harold's handshake was soft and damp, the grip of a man who's never lifted anything heavier than a wine list. "Harold Whitfield, CFO of Belmont Crest Hospitality Group." He said it the way some men say their own name in church. "I know exactly who you are," I thought. "I own the paper on half your company's debt." "Pleasure," I said. "We heard you drove buses for the city," Vivian said, the word dirty in her mouth. "Trucks, mostly. Retired now." Harold barked a laugh and snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. "Champagne for the table. The real list, not the house list." When the waiter reached me, Harold held up a hand. Maybe a domestic beer for Marcus here. Something he's used to. It was a small thing, a power move dressed up as a kindness, and Reginald laughed along with it, looking everywhere but at me. I asked the waiter for the champagne instead. Harold's smile flickered but held. "So, Marcus," he said, settling back like a king granting audience, "Reginald says you're helping with the wedding fund. Generous of you, given your situation." My situation. He meant my poverty, real or imagined, the flannel and the scuffed boots and the truck parked 4 blocks away, out of shame that wasn't mine. "I do what I can for my family," I said. Of course. We're used to a certain standard, you understand. Belmont Crest just opened our 4th property in Charleston. Vivian and I were just in Lisbon for the ribbon cutting. He went on a while about wine country and a tailor in Milan, marking his territory the way men like Harold always do, establishing that he was the one with culture and I was the one who fixed the truck himself. Then the business talk started, the way it always does. Once men like Harold have had 2 glasses of something expensive. He leaned in like we were old friends, his breath sour with Cabernet. "You know what nobody tells you about running hotels, Marcus? Occupancy numbers are a story you tell the bank. We've got 3 properties carrying numbers that exist mostly on paper. I've been moving capital around, restructuring some debt through entities the auditors don't look at too hard. You learn to reclassify reality. That's the difference between men who own buildings and men who clean them." I memorized every word. I kept my face as still as a closed account. "Isn't that risky?" I asked, playing soft. Harold laughed so hard he nearly choked on his wine. "Risk is for people without leverage. I run the books. I make the wheels turn. Belmont Crest collapses without me holding it together with both hands." He pointed his fork at me. "You wouldn't understand. With your situation. Some of us evolved past punching a clock, Marcus. Some of us stayed behind to load the truck." Vivian laughed, light and cruel. "Don't be hard on him, Harold. Not everybody has your vision. Somebody's got to drive the deliveries. Isn't that right, Marcus?" She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's honorable work. That's what they say, isn't it?" I let it roll off me. I ate my steak, medium rare, and let him keep talking, because every sentence out of his mouth was another nail. By the time the bill came in, its little black folder, Harold had confessed to creative accounting, offshore restructuring, and insurance write-offs on inventory that mysteriously vanished and reappeared on the secondary market. He'd done it all, bragging, certain the retired truck driver across the table didn't have the vocabulary to understand a single word. The check arrived. Harold patted his jacket with theatrical surprise, checked his pockets, looked at Vivian with wide, innocent eyes. "Honey, did I leave my wallet at the hotel?" "Honey." Vivian, without looking up from her compact mirror, said she never carried cash. The folder slid across the white tablecloth and stopped an inch from my water glass. "Marcus, hate to ask, but could you cover this? I'll wire you back first thing." It wasn't a request. It was a test, and he wanted to watch me fail it in front of my granddaughter. I opened the folder. $640. I reached for the secured credit card I kept in my old wallet, the one with the $500 limit I used to build a credit history for the man I was pretending to be. I handed it over. I knew exactly what would happen. The waiter came back without the folder pressed to his chest, his face apologetic. "Sir, I'm sorry. The card was declined." Harold's laugh rang out across the restaurant. "Declined? Oh, that's rich." Imani's face went the color of ash. Reginald stared at his plate like it held the answer to a test he hadn't studied for. "I must have hit my limit," I said calmly, taking the card back. "New tires on the truck last week." "Tires?" Imani hissed under her breath, mortified. "You're declined over tires, Pop-Pop, in front of his whole family." Harold reached into the same jacket pocket he'd padded empty 3 minutes earlier and produced a heavy black corporate card, the Belmont Crest logo embossed on the front. He set it down with a clink like a winning hand at poker. "Put it on this. And add 20% for the trouble. Then he looked at me, the warmth gone cold. This is how the world works, Marcus. Some people create problems, some people solve them. Don't ever try to sit at the big table again. You don't have the chips. I thanked him quietly. I let them think they'd won. I watched him sign that corporate card receipt for a personal dinner, a felony in plain ink, and I filed it away like a man closing a drawer. A week later, Imani showed up at my door in the rain without an umbrella, her mascara running in 2 gray rivers. I let her stand on the porch a moment before I opened the door wide. Pop, pop. Vivian says if we don't book the Callaway room at the Ashbury, I know it's not even named after us. It's a coincidence, but it's $110,000. And if we don't put the deposit down by Friday, Reginald's mother says the wedding is off. She says I'm not good enough for her son if I can't even show up properly. I poured her a coffee she didn't drink. I listened to her beg, watched my granddaughter, a grown woman, get down on her knees on my kitchen floor and ask me to liquidate my savings for a room she didn't even need. I told her I'd do it. I pulled out a single sheet of paper my attorney had drawn up that morning, a note that looked simple enough but carried teeth, a confession of judgment clause buried on page 3, the kind that lets a man collect without ever stepping into a courtroom. She signed it without reading a word, just like I knew she would. She hugged me, called me the best pop-pop in the world, and ran back out into the rain to call Vivian with the good news. She didn't ask how I'd pay my own bills with my savings gone. She just took the win and ran, the way her father once had, the way I'd let too many people in my life run from me with my own money in their pockets and not a second glance behind them. That night I called Walter. She signed. Did she read it? Not a word. She thinks I'm an old man playing banker. She's about to find out you're the bank, Marcus. 3 days before the engagement dinner, Walter called with the full file on Harold. $2.3 million unaccounted for across 3 Belmont Crest properties, funneled through shell entities with names that sounded like law firms but weren't. I already owned 40% of Belmont Crest's outstanding debt through a quiet acquisition 6 months prior. Bought up cheap when the company was bleeding, and nobody else wanted the risk. With one more signature, I'd own controlling interest. Harold Whitfield worked for me and didn't know it yet. I told Walter to finalize the paperwork and hold the announcement until I gave the word. When do you want it to drop? Walter asked. The engagement dinner? I said. I want him standing in a room full of people he's been lying to when it happens. That's cold, Marcus. They called me the help, Walter. I'm just going to show them who actually signs the checks. The dinner was held in Vivian's own backyard, a sprawling estate with a tent the size of a small church and string lights threaded through oak trees that probably cost more to decorate than my house was worth. I arrived in my navy suit, polished shoes, the same man I'd always been. A valet, a teenager in a red vest, looked at my Silverado like it had wandered in from another zip code and parked it down the hill in the overflow lot without opening my door. Inside the tent, round tables glowed under crystal centerpieces. I found my name on a printed card at the very edge of things. Table 11, tucked beside the bar cart where the staff kept restocking ice. Vivian had placed her own catering staff between me and the head table like a wall. I sat and watched the party fill in. Harold held court near the bar with a glass of wine I happened to know I'd paid for through the very acquisition he didn't yet know existed. Reginald and Imani worked the room like royalty, accepting congratulations, never once glancing toward table 11 to see if I had a drink or a friend beside me. Then came the toasts. Vivian stood with a microphone, radiant in champagne silk, and thanked everyone who'd made the dinner possible, the florist, the planner, her hairdresser, even the valet staff by name. She did not say mine. Then her eyes found me at the edge of the tent, and something sharpened in her face, like she'd remembered a chore left undone. Oh, and let's not forget, she said, holding up her glass with a smile sharp as a blade, the help. Marcus over there, who we were so generous to invite tonight. A ripple of laughter moved through the tent, and Imani, my own granddaughter, laughed loudest of all, covering her mouth like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. We do appreciate you covering the deposit, Marcus. Really, we do. I mean, what else would a man in your position have to spend it on? More laughter, sharper now, the kind that smells blood. I sat very still. I let it wash over me. I let them believe they'd broken something in me, because in a way they had just not the part they were aiming for. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked to the front of the tent. Vivian's smile faltered as I approached the microphone stand. "Sit down, Marcus," she said, half laughing, half uncertain. "This isn't your moment." "No," I said, my voice steady, carrying easily over the string lights and the murmuring crowd. "I think it is." I pulled out my phone and sent a single text. The tent's sound system, which I'd quietly arranged with the AV crew an hour earlier through a call from Walter, switched the projector screen behind the head table from a slideshow of Reginald and Imani's engagement photos to a live news feed. The banner across the bottom read, "Breaking Vance. Equity announces takeover of Belmont Crest Hospitality amid fraud investigation." Harold's face went the color of dishwater. His wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the patio stone, the sound cutting clean through the music like a starting gun. "That's me," I said into the microphone. "Marcus Calloway, chairman and majority owner of Vance Equity Partners. As of this morning, I also own controlling interest in Belmont Crest Hospitality Group. I let that settle over the tent like fog. Which makes me your employer, Harold." Harold's mouth opened and closed without sound. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands and read the formal notice of suspension Walter had sent precisely on schedule, his photo from the Vance Equity directory glowing on the screen beside my name. "It's you," he whispered. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. The numbers. I can explain." "You already did," I said. "Over dinner." Every word. Vivian rushed toward her husband, heels catching in the grass. "What is happening? Harold, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them who we are." Harold turned on her instead, the fear curdling fast into fury, the way it does in men who've never once been told no. "You stupid woman," he snapped, loud enough that the whole tent heard it. "Do you have any idea what you just did? Mocking him? That's not the help. That's the man who just bought my company." Two men in plain dark suits stepped through the side entrance of the tent, badges clipped to their belts, moving with the calm precision of people who do this for a living. Harold's knees buckled before they even reached him. "Harold Whitfield," one of them said, "you're being detained, pending a formal fraud investigation into Belmont Crest Hospitality Group." They walked him out past the string lights, past the cake, past 300 phones already filming, while he begged my forgiveness with snot running down his face, and Vivian screamed that her husband was a respected man, that this was a celebration, that they couldn't do this here. I turned to Imani, who stood frozen beside Reginald, her mouth open on a sound that never came. "You called me the help an hour ago," I said quietly, just to her. "I want you to understand something. I built an empire so you'd never have to bow to anybody for a meal. And the first thing you did with that gift was laugh while a stranger called your grandfather a servant." Reginald found his voice first, small and stunned. "Sir Mr. Calloway, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't." "You didn't ask," I said. "That's worse." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folded promissory note, smoothing it flat on the linen tablecloth in front of Imani. "Do you remember signing this?" She nodded, pale. $110,000, Imani. I'm calling the note. Tonight." Pop, please. Not here." "You didn't think twice about humiliating me here. I won't think twice about collecting here either." I looked between her and Reginald. "The deposit on the Ashbury is withdrawn as of 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. The venue already has the notice. As for the engagement ring on your finger, Reginald, I believe that was financed through Belmont Crest's employee credit program, which, as of tonight, falls under federal review, along with everything else his father touched." Reginald looked down at his own hand on Imani's, like he was seeing it for the first time. I didn't raise my voice again. I didn't need to. I turned and walked back through the tent, past 300 stunned guests filming on their phones, out into the cool night air, down the hill to the overflow lot where my old Silverado sat waiting, faithful and unbothered by any of it. Imani caught up to me at the truck, breathless, mascara streaked down both cheeks. Pop, please. I'm sorry." "I didn't mean it like that. It was just a joke. Everybody was laughing. "I know," I said. "That's what hurt. You can't just leave me here. Reginald's whole family is falling apart. I don't know what to do." "You're not stuck, Imani. You've got a good mind and a degree I paid every dime for. You have more than I had when I started with nothing but a borrowed truck and a dream nobody believed in." I opened the driver's door. "But I love you too much to keep bailing you out of choices you made with your own two hands. That's the debt you actually owe me, not the money, the growing up." She stood there in the gravel, arms wrapped around herself in the cold, watching me climb into the truck. I didn't roll the window down again. I started the engine, that old familiar rattle that always sounded to me like honesty, and I pulled out of the lot, leaving the wreckage of that gilded tent glowing behind me in my mirror. I drove home with the radio low and the windows cracked, the night air smelling like rain that hadn't fallen yet. I thought about Dorothy, gone 11 years now, and what she would have said about all of it. She always told me money doesn't change who a person is, it just removes the excuse for hiding it. I believed that more that night than I ever had in the boardroom. When I got home, I sat down at my kitchen table with a fresh bowl of grits, this time hot, and I ate slow. My phone buzzed with calls. I let go to voicemail Walter with updates, a reporter from the business desk, wanting a quote, Imani 3 more times before midnight. I didn't answer any of them yet. There would be time enough tomorrow for lawyers and headlines and the slow work of rebuilding whatever was left worth. Rebuilding between me and my granddaughter. What I learned that night, sitting alone at my own table the way I had 1,000 nights before, is that the people who measure you by your shoes will never see the man inside them. I had spent 40 years building something solid, so the people I loved would never have to bow to anyone, and instead, some of them learned to bow to everyone but me. That's the cost nobody warns you about when you build quietly. So if you've ever been underestimated by your own blood, family, I want you to remember this. Your worth was never sitting in your wallet to begin with. It was in how you carried yourself when nobody was checking the balance. Hold on to that. And if this story moves something in you tonight, go on and hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you have called the loan or would you have let it go? Real love isn't measured in how loudly someone defends you when the room is empty of consequence. It's in the quiet, unglamorous showing up, the casseroles and coupons and Tuesday phone calls nobody applauds. Marcus didn't win because he had money hidden away. He won the moment he decided his own dignity wasn't for sale at any price. So tonight, family, go call somebody who carried you when no one was watching and thank them out loud. A small note for you. This story was imagined and written by AI for entertainment purposes, meant simply to wrap a positive life lesson in a tale worth sharing.